So, you see, it's still evolving. And the reason why we want to engage the students and we want to further encourage the students to get involved is because we want them to actually be part of the change. Okay?
Now, today we are going to talk about how in Jesuit education aim, aims to form men and women for others. But even when we are having a lot of societal critical issues in our country and of the world, we see that there are still people who don't engage to even discourses about this. And so we want to have a conversation on this and we try to look into our choice and see if this kinds of conversation will hopefully inspire people to be engaged. Now, it was discussed by Daniel Franklin Pilario in his book Faith in Action that most people, the reason why most people do not engage to societal issues is first because of prevalence of corruption. Next is apathy and indifference. And one last thing he said was about um, uh, frustration of the system, especially that of the government, and that hinders people from really going out and do their part in engaging to the society and probably contribute to social change. Now, we are very lucky because today we have a political scientist who will give us shed us light on how this really affects us. And he's actually the chairperson of the Political Science and History Department of the Ateneo de Davao University. And apart from that, he himself is giving out his gifts and service to the people, especially to the indigenous communities. So please help me welcome our main speaker for today, Mr. Ramon Beleno III. Hello, sir.
Hello.
How are you?
Fine, morning.
Good morning.
Yes.
So, can you share to us how did you start being a political scientist and what triggered you from being just a student or a professor to being out there engaging to the world?
Yeah, so actually, it's a long story.
Yes.
I started as a economics major. That's why it's a wrong impression that political science students are bad in math. So I was really good in math, and I took the honors program economics at the Ateneo de Manila. But because of arrogance, after 2 semesters, I flunked one math because I corrected the teacher during a discussion, and I think she took that personally. So she flunked me, and the department said that they will not remove me from the program, but instead they want me to retake the math. But I told them that, well, I don't want to take a summer class because I'm from the province, so I have to go to the province, go back, spend time with my family. And second is that, what if I will meet the teacher again in my future math subjects? So because I'm really fond of dealing with people, I decided to shift to socio-anthro. Okay? But when I went to the department of socio-anthro, holding my shifting form, the office was so filled up with students that the secretary did not actually know that I was there. And for several minutes that I was waiting for my time, I said, maybe this is not for me. So I just walked around the campus until I reached the third floor of the social science building. And then I saw the political science department. Yeah. And when I knocked and I opened the door, there were no students. It was only the secretary. And the secretary greeted me with all that. Yeah. So, good morning, yeah, how can I help you? And I said, I'm shifting here. So that made me become a political science student. Now, my engagement started when, since I'm a political science major, we deal with a lot of government institutions, and one of which, under our public ad class, we have to expose ourselves to non-government organizations. So that started opening the doors for me, my awareness of different programs that not offered by the government. Then because I was so into non-government organizations, I joined this student organization in Ateneo de Manila. It's called Musmos. And what they do is that they take care of street children, and that's only for the weekends. So I got to meet a lot of street boys at the time and get to know them, and that actually inspired me, to actually make programs for people like them. And the last puzzle was actually on my last year as a student. We had this immersion, theology immersion, that I was actually brought to this isolated tribe in Pampanga, and I had to spend 3 days in that tribe. And there, that really opened my my mind to the things that we don't usually see, and that is why I have this passion for indigenous people because of that experience, because they are really very nice people. Just to tell you the story of when I was there, the house is actually only three walls. And so it's on top of a mountain with 3 walls, so it's very very cold. So with my foster Aita parents, they had 5 children. All of them are actually with colds. Okay? And when I spent the time there, they really gave everything to me. When we slept, I occupied half of the house. And then I have all the blankets, all the pillows, and that's how they actually shared to us. And I said that if they would go to our house, would I do the same? So that actually started my passion in helping the indigenous people.
Did you go there as a professor, sir, or was it?
No, I was still
voluntary?
a student. That's why when I graduated and started teaching, that same passion, that same fire, I wanted that with my students. So even if I was then still a young teacher, I kept on involving my students with a lot of socio-political activities. And that was the time that I tried organizing students into political parties, trying to engage them into socio-political activities, and worst case scenario, I even allowed them to join me in rallies during that time.
I think that isn't that worse.
Yeah.
You're fighting for.
Yeah, but of course, right now as a department chair, I'm always thinking of the safety of my
Yeah.
students. So for me at that time, I was not even thinking of their safety. I was just thinking of the idealism, the passion, fighting for the poor. But I was maybe I was too young to think of other things like safety.
Yeah. But it's good for you, sir, to have that first-hand experience of the poor, and that's why I think your heart was very full. How was the experience of sharing that kind of passion, and were all the people sort of did they respond, or did they all engage to your advocacy?
Yeah. At first, it's quite difficult, especially if you're teaching in an Ateneo institution. At that time, I was teaching in Ateneo de Naga, and since we are very comfortable inside our campus, even here, we are more comfortable here in Ateneo de Davao. It's quite difficult for them to open their eyes to the reality that there's another world out there.
Yeah.
So at first, no, you don't get them, you don't see a lot of enthusiasm. No. At start, no, medyo it's awkward for them. In fact, no, medyo I have to remind them, don't cover your nose when you're talking to them, things like those. No. Because they are not sensitive. The students are not sensitive. No. For them, that's usual. Or you don't have to say aloud the things that you actually observe. Right? Like it smells here. So yeah, it starts there. No. But once you open up their awareness to the other people, I think that's why I really want even my Pol Sci students right now, if I have social political activities outside, and if they don't have any classes, I usually bring them with me. Right? And that is one way of allowing them to see the outside world. In fact, we just came from a 8-day tour from Manila. I brought all my graduating students to Manila for an 8-day educational tour, and they really saw the difference between what the book is telling them and what is really happening in real life.
such a passionate teacher, you know, being able to bring your students out there, making the theory so real. And I think your students are very happy to have that kind of experience.
Yeah,
Were they moved?
yeah. At first, I told you, it's awkward for them.
Yeah.
I think one thing that they learned from that trip is that I brought them to SLB, Simbang Likod ng Bayan, in Ateneo, Manila, and the SLB people shared their passion on the APECO issue. And right now, my students are into the signature campaign, and I think that moved them. Now, can you just imagine? That's only one issue that you open their eyes into. How much more if you actually engage them, make them aware of a lot more issues that we are having, especially here in Mindanao. If they have that issue in Luzon, I think we have a lot more issues here in Mindanao, especially talking about peace, about underdevelopment, about poverty, about social justice, and for now, I think the greatest challenge for me is really how to secure the security of the students if ever I allow them to come with me, join me in some of my travels. The last time that I brought two of my students is I've mentioned to you the indigenous people pilgrimage that we had in Bukidnon. I brought two students, but right now I think they are organizing things. I think one of the students are very active now in Samahan.
Mm. Well, good for like few students you have who really went their way to be more open to what is out there. But how do you see this problem we have right now? Do you agree with Daniel Franklin Pilario when he says that?
Yeah, actually, that's the same, almost the same theory that we have in political science, and that's the reason why we offer subjects that would really engage students into those kinds of topics. For example, in terms of corruption, okay, um, obviously, if a person is uneducated and you would engage him or her into a anti-corruption campaign, the answer would be, now why do that? Anyway, all governments are corrupt. But what we're saying is that, well, we should find first, what are the reasons behind the corruption, what are the factors, and how can we address that corruption? Because if corruption is given, if we cannot stop corruption, how can we limit corruption? Because if we actually limit corruption, that means that we can provide more social services to our people. So that's one thing. For me, it's really a challenge. Institutional challenges are there. For example, we want to discuss more of those topics. Okay? We want to discuss more of those topics. We want our students to be more engaged. But the problem is we have some institutional requirements from CHED. Can you just imagine when I brought my class to Manila, we have to actually prepare 3 months prior. So we went July, so during the summer break, we don't have classes, we were already preparing for the trip. Okay? The key idea there is that people tend to engage if they actually see the real problem. Okay? It's difficult if you just tell them what the problem is. In schools, lecture them, this is the problem, this is poverty, this is corruption. But without them experiencing it, it's very difficult for them to really understand the problem. Right? And that's why when we have immersions, I would really engage my students. When the Arupe introduced the SLP, I said, yeah, the same class I brought to Manila, the same class that I required to undergo the SLP. So right now they are actually organizing activities for 3 barangays that were assigned to them, and hopefully before this month ends, we were able to execute the programs that they have. And hopefully when they graduate and they find that those things are quite, for me, make me happy, then they would continue doing that. Kasi right now they are still complaining of so many projects, and they don't find any value in what they do right now. But when you see them finding value on what they do, and I think the same passion that I had when I was a student will be the same passion that they will be actually bringing when they graduate from the Ateneo.
It's good that they were able to have that chance or having that immersion, and so that brought them to the experience of seeing the real problem. But there are so many things happening around in the country, especially in the country, and it gets overwhelming sometimes when some people still choose to look away. What do you think about this?
Yeah, several factors, right? Um, Number one is that right now they are quite well. Their hands are full with academic requirements,
Yeah.
right? And if you try to engage them, they are quite preoccupied with all the things that needs to be done in school. In fact, you would always, I can always read mga rants nila in Twitter or in Facebook, that, mga memes na they would be sharing. Siguro, that's the first one. They are so engaged with the things they do that they tend to forget that there are other things to be done. Okay? Second is that they don't find value with what they do right now, okay, with the things that they need to do in the future. Okay? Like for example, doing a research work for them is just work. Right? But for me, when you do research, only you can actually find better things. So for example, I, 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 right now I'm really doing a research on federalism and how federalism can actually uh, s- start development in provinces that really are underdeveloped. Okay? There are so many negative things that they were saying about federalism, that we can't afford federalism, that federalism is only to prolong to extend the term of the president. But for me, no, since it's here, okay, and this is what what the government wants, so what can we do with this? So my research is now on federalism and trying to understand how would federalism help our provinces, no, our local government, our barangays, our indigenous people in the future if we will address this. Okay. It's about time that we just don't discuss the problem. No? Problem right now with our millennials is that we're just telling the problem, no, problema ito. And they are not even trying to think of the solutions. Okay? So now, if you are thinking of problems, dapat hindi lang problema yung iniisip natin. Dapat we are also thinking of what can we do. Okay? As a student, as a teacher, as a community organizer, what can we do? And that's exactly what I'm telling my students when they were actually doing the SLP. Last week we just came from the barangay, and one of the group would just want to request like the city government to provide roads. It's like we can't do that, right? Right? As a political science student, no, what you have learned in 4 years, what can you do for them? Okay. So that started them thinking right now. So now I'm waiting for their project proposals, right? Because really, you can only do so much. Okay? So we can say that I'm just a student, I cannot do anything. Yeah, you can still do, but number one, you have to look at your strengths. No? What can you do? What do you know? And second is you try to look at your weaknesses. How far or how uh, long can you actually do what you are doing right now? Okay? Now, if you are grounded on that, okay, you can actually do so much. Okay? Kasi just look around, just be creative, you can actually do so much.
Actually, you've raised so many points already, and not just about why is this happening, but actually going into discussing into what can be done. Now, it's good, Sir Beleno, that we have few students here who can actually, we can hear their side and probably open to us, even when they are having academic requirements. Some of them still choose to be engaged. And what do you think is the reason why some students don't do it? Anyway, we have RP volunteers here. We have staff from the RP Office of Social Information who can also share their own opinion about what hinders people from being part of societal affairs. Anyone?
Pat? I think hearing from as a student, I think I can really resonate with some points that you have said, that why people don't really engage. First is like being comfortable, because I think that it's really a factor that why make your life complicated when you can live like comfortably, right? So I think it really contributes a lot to apathy, like what you said, insensitivity, and um, I would just want. Can I ask one?
Yes, sure.
I just want to ask Ma'am Precious mentioned about the reasons why we don't engage. One of them is like frustration of the system. So I think how as students, how can we go about it? Should we convince our co-students that "Oh, no, the system is okay, or I don't know how we can go about it, because I really think that this is a main issue why some people don't choose to na makialam kasi parang frustrated na sila with what's going around. So
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. In fact, I had the same question with an Australian friend. There was a time that I get so frustrated with the government that I said, "No, well, I just want to go to. You're from Australia. Can I go to Australia? Study in Australia, teach in Australia?" And my friend just smiled at me. You know what? You're very, very impatient. Okay? The Philippines it's coming from a foreigner, and I'm a Filipino. The Philippines is actually doing great right now. Right? Yeah, still have corruption. Yeah, you still have political instability. You still have political dynasty. Okay? But how old is your democracy? Okay? How old is your How old is Australian democracy? How old is U.S. democracy? Okay? So if you try to compare, Philippine democracy is very, very young, and we are still learning, like learning our steps. Right? And if you try to look at the evolution of our democracy, we assume that we start after Marcos. We just assume that we started after Marcos. But anyway, if you try to look at the steps, we're actually improving. Okay? First and foremost, before it's really the family name that actually goes into the ballots. Before it's really just a family name, or regardless, we don't anymore look at the first name. It's just a family name, right? And right now, if before, if things happen in places, no, rarely do we hear people talk about it. Rarely do we actually engage people in discussions. Okay, rarely do we have debates on political issues, right? Seriously, during I think the time of my parents, we really don't talk of politics when we are eating. Right? Right now, I engage my 7-year-old son into a political debate. Yeah, a simple debate as who's the best in your class, yeah. Who's the leader, and why is he the leader? Why did you choose him to be the leader, right? Or things like those, right? And who is Digong? They have to understand, they have to identify authority. Right now, what we are looking is that our democracy is evolving. Right? We are learning from this. No, we have several presidents, no, from Aquino administration, that's Cory Aquino administration, until Digong. We have different sets of leaders, and we are learning from each type. Okay? For example, many Filipinos are saying that Filipinos are politically immature. They are politically immature. So they don't know their democracy, especially when they elected Erap Estrada. Okay? And my foreigner friend said, no, you Filipinos are very intelligent. Why? Because you want a president who loves the poor. Okay? You got what you wanted. You got Erap. Right? Unfortunately, there are some other qualities of Arab that we don't like. So, you see, it's still evolving. And the reason why we want to engage the students, and we want to further encourage the students to get involved is because we want them to actually be part of the change. Okay? So telling them that, well, this is a frustration of the government, well, tell them that if you're frustrated with the government, the only way to change the government is not leave the Philippines, but be part of the government. Right? There's this lecture that I usually have with my students. It's about adultery and concubinage. It's about equality. Right? And it's if you know the issue is there is that really it's unequal. 80% of the time, wives are found guilty of adultery, and only 2% of the time men are found guilty of concubinage. So does that mean that the women are more into extramarital affairs than the men? No. But because of the law is very unequal. For adultery, what the prosecution needs is only what we call circumstantial evidence. By mere circumstance, the wife can already be convicted of adultery. Example, wife together with a companion seen together entering a room, and they were seen together leaving the room. That's already a circumstance. Right? But for concubinage, okay, even actual evidence of carnal knowledge is not enough. It must be scandalous. And usually, women, the wives, don't file concubinage cases because they don't like scandals. Okay? Now, of course, my students were so frustrated. That's unfair. Yeah. Okay? That's why if you graduate, it's my job for them. If you graduate, okay, after graduation, join show business. And if you're sikat na, join politics and change the law. Because I can't do anything about that. Okay? Don't get frustrated. Be involved. Okay? And that's how I engage them. Okay? And right now, the last batch of also who graduated, I think 3 of them are already government officials. One of them is now Kidapawan Municipal. It's Sentainan. It's already Then I have 2 political science students who are now SK chair. Okay? One is still a student, the other one just graduated last April. So I hope that actually inspire them, that if they are part of the system, that they don't become corrupted by the system, but the catalyst for change. Because you don't just get frustrated. Actually, the more that you see the problems with the system, the more that you must be encouraged to actually make the change or be the change in the system.
Thank you. How about the others? Would you like to share your insights? Any questions?
Actually, for me, when Sir Beleno was talking, especially about students being having hands or full or being preoccupied with academic stuff, I actually very much understand that ever since, because I am a student, of course. But also that the question to ask to why some students are like, for example, us, we chose to be here, or like there were things that we find more value into doing, like going here, being in a conversation, or engaging more to communities, and others like stay in their homes, studying more. And for me, I think it's the fact that seeing the problem themselves, that they were not able to, they recognize that there is a problem, but they don't realize the depth of it. That's why for me, I engage because I see myself more being more helpful to a society that needs to know more of this. And in a sense, it's quite difficult to actually relate that to other people because we see problems as norms. We see problems normally. It's like we have accepted the problem itself, that it's there. The people always think that it's something we are not able to change because we see change. We want change, something that happens in a blink of an eye, in a snap. Then when Sir actually said things about the topic about being frustrated with our government, and then there I realized that I guess we have been so used to getting things instantly that we have detached ourselves to the fact that change can somewhat also be very difficult and sometimes lengthy. Then I just hope that if more people were able to be in this conversation, maybe hear it really, so that people will be able to understand more that yes, it's a work in progress, and that's a good thing. Then I just think that people are not they have not realized enough so much of what's happening, with the fact that we are comfortable with what is wrong already, that we have not known what is right talaga. So I think that's one of the reasons or the
Yeah.
problems.
I want to actually react to that. Kasi right now, I'm doing a study on voting behavior, and the reason why Digong won. Right now kasi people are very, very pragmatic. Especially, reacting to what you said. Very, very pragmatic. No? Meron kaagad silang cost-benefit analysis. If I do this, that's why I'm quite disappointed with students now. Sige, join this activity. Then we would ask, my class grade? Diba? So that means for that person, only grades matter. And I keep on telling them, there are a lot of things way more important than your grades. Okay? So yun, no? Kasi very pragmatic tayo. Iniisip ka agad natin, what is there for me? Ano yung sa akin? So when we try to elect people, no, yun na inisip natin. No? If we elect people, ay ito kilala to ni mama, no? Bibigyan ako nito ng scholarship or bibigyan ako ng trabaho or may nakalagay na akong trabaho nito pag ito binoto ko o nanalo. Yan ngayon yung that's really the problem right now. Okay? That's why even if there are issues of human rights violations, issues of, let's say, personal moral issues regarding certain politician, we usually brush it away. Kasi iniisip agad natin, well, ano ba yung para sa akin? Okay? So, that's bad thing na it's only practicality, which is the basis of our political decision. But we can actually, yun nga sabi nga natin, no? Hindi dapat problema lang tinitingnan natin. Tingnan natin kung what can we do with that problem. So baka pwede tayong gumawa ng program that would let people think that what they are doing is practical but actually good for the other. Okay? Na para sa kanila na helping the other actually helps myself. No? Babalik din sa akin yan. Okay? So how we do that is a big question. But we should be creative, no? Talagang we should think outside of the box. Na paano natin magawa yun. And yun, in my class, no, I start with just inspiring them. Sa ngayon, no, kasi I can't give them anything. I can't promise them anything. I can promise them na, sige, if you help a lot more people, then good karma will come, then you will get better grades, and if you have better grades, then you have better jobs. You know? That is not how it works. Okay? So yun, I'll give you one example na how to be pragmatic is that right now, if we change the constitution, the government, Digong wants na to be yung constituent assembly. Okay? That I don't really like, no? Because constituent assembly is very dangerous. Kasi ibig sabihin nun, only the politicians, congressmen, senators will convene and change the constitution. Okay? And for me, I have trust issues with our politicians because they have political motivations. No? So, this is one pragmatic approach. If talagang it's constituent assembly, what can we do? Okay? So we are now trying to find ways on how to engage, okay, our politicians na when we do constituent assembly, that they should listen to what we want. So doon na kami nagko-concentrate ngayon. So worst case scenario, kung mag-con-us tayo, ano ba ang pwedeng gawin ng Ateneo de Davao? Okay? How can we engage ourselves? How can we engage our students? How can we engage our politicians into thinking of policies, of provisions in the Constitution that is to the benefit of the people? So yung ganun na lang. So how do we do that?
Alright, thank you, sir. Yes?
I thank you, Sir Ramon, for giving time for this very important conversation. My interest is, I would like to ask your opinion regarding, in relation to what we're saying, that we are pragmatic, we think of our own self-interest, that's why it influences our voting behavior at the very least. I am just interested also to know whether, as a people, or do we really are we already there as in terms of identifying ourselves as citizens? Like para bang ang thinking ko, because if we are on the level of personal interest, are we lacking in terms of our recognition of ourselves as Filipinos, as citizens? What
Yeah,
can you say about that,
yeah,
Sir Mon?
exactly, that's the problem, ma'am. Filipinos right now are very, very regionalistic. And in fact, Digong is actually banking on that to push the federalism. Right? Really, the problem is trying to establish, our Filipino identity, who we are as Filipinos, what are our intrinsic and extrinsic values. Okay? And I think that we have problems with that. No? So, sino ba tayo bilang mga Pilipino is something that we don't usually answer. Sabihin lang natin, well, because I like sinigang, I'm a Filipino. So, mga ganun. And we're saying that, no, really, no? How can you say that you are a Filipino? Okay? So, and what are your values, no? What are the values that really you can say that you are a Filipino? It's good that nowadays, no, there are a lot of film producers, right, who are making films about our national heroes. Right? Yesterday we launched one, Goyo, and in fact I tonight with my teachers we will be watching the film together, no, as a department. So that's good. That's time to remind our people who we are as a people, where we came from. Kasi the problem right now is that we're so pragmatic that, our world is just 2 feet away. What happens with this 2 feet na na diameter, na radius, no? Hanggang doon lang talaga, no? Ito ako, no? So if I'm not affected with what you do, then it's okay with me. So that's a problem. Okay? We have to tell our people, okay, that best things are to come, no? If we do things better, if we think of others, if you think of not only of the local politics, no, even politics, we are very, very localized. Even history, we are very, very localized. We just know our local history. Okay? So one way of doing that is actually reminding them, no, where we came from, what are our values, who we are as Filipinos, and in fact, no, that will not only affect how we look at ourselves in the future, but how we develop as a nation. Okay? Because right now, for example, bakit bagsak yung going to economics and nation building. Bakit ganito yung atin? No? Is that because we don't know what we want. Okay? Pag may nakita tayong working with other countries, gusto natin ganun din. Pag may nakita tayong working in another country, gusto natin ganun din. So right now, we don't know what we want. So the courses that our students get is, or what they want to take is what is being economically secured. Diba? So, ano ba yung courses sa ibang bansa? In fact, no, yung kagad ng ibang bansa. Ano bang sikat sa ibang bansa? Ano bang uso sa ibang bansa? Okay. And by that, no, we forget who we are. Okay. So, yun, that's the sad thing. No? Hindi natin nakikita na sige, what are our strengths ba? Okay. Ano bang strength ng mga Pilipino? Agricultural ba tayo? Industrial ba tayo? Technological ba tayo? Okay. So, we have so many water. Okay. And yet we are importing fish. Because we've already forgotten who we are and where we came from. Okay, so ngayon, if we've forgotten who we are and where we came from, we also tend to forget our values. Okay? And when you don't have values, you end up with just being practical. Kasi walang value. So practical na lang tayo. So usually, I'm not generalizing things, but usually practical people are those who do not have values. Kasi nga, pag-isip mo, ano ba yung importante sa'yo? Basta kung ano yung comfortable sa akin. Okay? So, kung ano yung what makes me happy. So, what makes you happy? What makes me comfortable? Yun. So, ikot-ikot na lang siya doon. So, you notice, ang kanyang mundo is only 2 feet na revolving around him or her. So, that's a problem. Ibig sabihin, you don't anymore think of the others. So pag merong awareness, wag na lang kasi pag maging aware ako, then ibig sabihin niyan, I have to share myself. Like, kung I have to share, di syempre, I have lesser. So that's the problem. Kasi sarili mo yung inisip mo. Okay? So hindi lumalayo yung isip na kung tutulong ka ba tapos naging better siya tapos pareho kayong better tapos tumulong kayo sa iba and everyone is better, lives would be better, di ba? So hindi na tayo lumalampas doon kasi nga yung ating mundo nasa 2 feet lang. Kung ano lang maabot mo, yun na lang yung mundo mo.
Thank you, Sir Ramon.
Any thoughts related to that? Something that hinders us is we're so engrossed of what we do for ourselves. Yes? Isn't it?
Sir, going back to the fundamental question of why are we not engaged or why are we so much engaged, I just really got struck with your experience, your first-hand experience of being exposed to the people, the ITAs, and I guess that question for me, it strikes me because it's a very personal question. How I wish passion could be easily kind of like contagious, that you can just pass it on to others, but it's not, because it's a very existential and a personal stance that you take up on yourself. So, as regards to the question of why engage or be engaged, aside from just my thoughts, aside from being really frustrated with the system, seeing the corruption, I think it must also begin really from being disturbed of what is happening in our society, or what is happening. Just you don't have to look far around your environment, and that first-hand experience would propel us to perhaps be uprooted from our comfort zones and perhaps hopefully engage in a much deeper way and really have some depth in terms of understanding how the society works. That's just my thought na I must be disturbed of what is happening today, and the person that is seeking for truth, seeking for understanding of what's happening today would eventually, hopefully, push me to not just resort to comfort, but going beyond that. So, just a
Yeah, actually that's no. Kasi like this, if we have this conversation and people get inspired, wow, that's nice, di ba? Tapos pero if they get busy, mawawala din 'yon. But once they experience it, yun nga, yung deepening of your awareness, and you do that by experience. Being disturbed is something that they can't easily forget. Okay? So yan yung So right now, siguro one way of doing, making our students aware is actually disturb them. Di ba? Na talagang they experience not only that about poverty, it's not really just about poverty, but really just thinking of social justice, why you have so much while they have so little. Makikita nila yun, bakit kaya? And the tendency right now, kasi kung practical, kasalanan nila yan kasi anak sila ng marami. Pero hindi yan yung umpisa nun. May umpisa pa yan, di ba? So if they can't see that, then they always tend to become practical na, nako, kasalanan nila yan. Kaya hindi ako ako na naman. So ibig sabihin, doon ka na naman lang sa comfort zone mo. Okay? So what else can we do? Kaya nga, yun yung Kaya maganda yung yung disturb na yun. And I really agree to that. Kasi yun din yung naka-disturb sa akin. So, I think kung I just limited myself with the four corners of the classroom when I was in college, baka, I can't be, I can't be aware. Hanggang ngayon siguro, yun pa rin, what is practical to me, what is good for me, what is comfortable for me, hanggang doon na lang ako.
Can I share an experience? I remember when I was in high school, watching this film, a documentary sa Ngalan ng Tubo. I hope some of you would have could see that it's about the documentary of those who were working in the sacadas, the sacadas, and after some years, I've had the opportunity to really be there, and I remember getting up early in the morning and just being with them and really kanang manapas og tubo ba to really work with them and ending up having only 7 pesos at the end of the day, because there is a certain scheme there that they are already indebted. So by the time they have their own wage, they have to pay their debts. So 7 pesos, and how would you, I don't know, you cannot imagine how they would try to put food on the table with that very little amount of money. After the experience, because we were just there for exposure, my companions decided, let's eat in Jollibee. Because yeah, after the experience finished, we were already we're outside of the committee. Let's eat in Jollibee. We were all hungry. I could not eat the food in Jollibee, having had that having been exposed to that kind of disturbance. And right now, like, I have that remained in me my high respect for farmers, for those who toil in the land. Like, every grain of rice is almost like gold for them, and yeah, something like that.
The gift of an immersion that enlighten them.
Yeah.
That really could contribute to being aware, not just being aware, but having that personal experience. I guess some of you can share your own personal experience of being engaged with the community. Can you share? Arman, you've had your asset, right? Are you still disturbed with what you've experienced?
Actually, for the previous question siguro na ma-share ko is that the main lesson that I am taking from this is experience is the key to every person's change in perspective of life, or kung paano niya tulungan ng society. However, siguro ang mahirap lang as a student is how can we inculcate to other students also the experience that we have. Kung parang, di ba, ang experience kay dapat first-hand experience, and then parang we don't have the luxury to let everyone experience what we have experienced. So parang mahirap as a student na parang mag-end ka na lang na sabihin mo na you have to experience it on your own. Pwede sama ka na lang sa akin and experience it on your own. In a way na naging ganun siya na in relation to that, siguro last 2016, I had my ASEP in Bukidnon, and then as same din kay sir na yung magpunta ng umahan, tapos mag-slide sa isang hill just to get 1 kilo of luya. Tapos i-ask namin, magkano ang tagbila day ang luya na yung ginabaligya sa palengke? Tag-25. Ha? Tapos we have to get that isa kasak siguro for 1 hour. Tapos ang mabaligya lang nila kay tag-25. Tapos in a way na murag layo kayo ang very far kaayo ang lakarin, dala-dala yung sack. And then when we go back here in the school, when we go back here and like, share the experience to other students, we are always asked by the students na unsaon na mo na pagtabang sa ila, wala man mi didto. How can we help them when we are not there? When we did not experience what you've experienced. So it is also a question for us na mga naka-experience ng mga inequalities in the society. How can we involve other students in such experience also, or how can we involve other students na come join us and be part of our advocacy, be part of what we want to do in the society. Siguro ganun siya.
I think what we can do, especially for the office, we are the Office of Social Formation, we are having curricular social formation programs which allows students to be exposed. Now, there is another invitation from having that experience of an immersion, and that is to live a life of immersion that is not just limited to immersing ourselves to what is out there, but actually, injustices are actually here, in maybe inside the university and outside the walls of our university. And I think Sir Ramon could share more like that, but we'd like to hear more from the two beautiful ladies we have here. I think you've had your own immersion and experience of encounter with the people. Can you also share your thoughts, Shane?
I I really agree with what everyone has said about experience being the key to initiating action for, especially for marginalized sectors, and it's really important for institutions like Ateneo and departments to provide opportunities for students to immerse with those in the peripheries. But I actually look and observe my fellow peers. I observe my fellow students and I see that each one of them has something to fight for, but they still don't know how to translate that into action. And once that we provide them with opportunities for the formation of values, we could see that they are really willing to act and participate in these programs that Arupe has in store for them. And it's really important that we establish this foundation where students can foster the values of compassion and solidarity. Because there's still a huge gap between our principles and our actual practice. And how we bridge that gap is through compassion, solidarity, those kinds of values. And once we have established that values to our students, to my fellow students, we also need to take this to another step, to another level, because I notice that there are a lot of people who are willing to participate. There are young people right now who are becoming pioneers of different various advocacies, but the problem is that they lack practical knowledge on how to address these advocacies. The intention is there, but the actual the response, the effectiveness of the response, it's kind of still problematic. And this is where it is also important for us to know how to form leaders. And it's also one of the keys to further sustainable development, especially communities, because we need to make sure that apart from gaining these values, apart from being aware of the problem, we need to know how to create sustainable and effective action, because we cannot solve the problem with just knowing what the values are or knowing the value of our values, but we also need to address the reality of the situation. So I guess that it's a call for us to really engage the students to different formation practices. We need to engage them we need to educate them more about how to build advocacies, how to build programs, proper programs that would really address this, and not just about ideas, but the practical application of all of them. So those are my thoughts.
That's integrity right there, being able to have that intentions and do it practically and being able to share it through sustainable development projects. We will take note of that in the RP office of session.
Yes.
Thank you so much. She's actually our ASF1 student and a scholar of the RP office, right? Thank you so much, Shane. Yes? Any insights?
For me, since I was in college, I was exposed in community immersions, outreach programs. So it made me realize that there are still some things that needs to be improved. Just like the provision of social services. There are still poor communities who are in need of such social services, wherein they don't just ask that if these are the things that they needed, but then for the compliance of the government just to provide such services that doesn't fit to the community, it's just so frustrating For example, giving of skills training that isn't appropriate to the household. They just provide skills training for the compliance of the government, but then it's not applicable for the family because there are carpenter, but then they provide skills training on food processing or what. So they cannot just practice the things that they have already. So for me, some government projects are not that effective since I came from the government when I am just so biased. Seeing where I was before, it's just providing services that aren't effective for them because we need to comply. So we need to push them beyond we need to push them kay tungod kami ang dapat gid mo push sa ila, but then dili mo sulti sila, ma'am dili man na mo gud na kay kinahanglan nganong kailangan mi magingani ako te, kailangan jud nato magingani kay tungod mando ni sa taas. So murag kay tungod siguro low educational background ingana wala sila masulti. So I've been exposed in so many communities wherein I've seen inequality. Kay tungod IP sila, kay tungod ingana sila. So para sa ilaha, ma'am hando diri lang man gyud mi. Wala na man gyud mi mabuhat. Dili na makaabot ang mga services diri kay tungod layo kaayo mi sa gobyerno, layo kaayo mi sa mga tao nga pwede mo makatabang sa amoa. So it moved me so much. So the least thing that I can do is to go there, impart what I have learned in college and in my previous job. So I do outreach. I go with them, makighalubilo, unsa ba ang mahatag sa government para sa ilaha maskin layo kay sila nga na ang government diri, but still naadjay pagkukulang gyud ang government as to service providing services to the poor, to the marginalized. And para sa ako murag gamay ra kay ko nga tao para musulti nga kaya nato ni murag lisod kaayo siya kung sila pud mismo pud naga-hold back nga we have still so much to do na apa jud tay mabuhat beyond sa ilahang balay gani or saan murag ingana siya. I am just so
There are two good points you raised, no? Being able to provide needs-based training or development programs for the poor. And one thing is the feeling of powerlessness when you see that you are like this, and then the problem is so big. I think Sir Beleno could share some insights about that. Feeling of powerlessness. I think there's this very good point written by Iana. Well, while power may reside in the people, it is either suppressed, concealed, or unused. So even when sometimes the reason why we don't engage is when we see that the problem is so big. What do you think, sir?
Yeah. Actually, that's usually the problem when you go to the communities. Right? Even when you try to organize them, and they would say that, well, we can only do this much. And I think that's one thing that I learned from the indigenous people, from the tribes. And every time I engage them, they are usually very, very humble. And to that extent, I think sabi ko, medyo negative na yung pagiging humble nyo. You have to really exert more, okay? And tell them what you want, what you need. And yung tendency kasi ng mga IP na if ever they are violated, they just go away. Go higher into the mountains. Right? And the problem with that is, well, they are so too far away that they cannot be reached by government services. So they rarely do they see doctors, okay, and of course they have so many problems. So that's one thing that we usually discuss when we go to the areas, especially when we do voters education. We are telling them that every 3 years you are given the chance, you have been given the power, and you are more powerful than the government because you will decide the fate of the government. Okay? And if you let these people decide for you, then that would really be a problem, no? Because once in 3 years that you get to take control of the government. And yun yung lagi namin sinasabi during voters education. Okay? Yeah, at this time medyo powerless kayo, no, you feel that you can do anything. Okay? Pero in a democratic society, no, na it's a government for the people, of the people, and by the people. Okay? Certain mechanisms are provided that people gets to be empowered even once every 3 years. Kaya sinasabi ko sa kanila na since every 3 years lang to, please, no, don't let other people control your decision just because of money, just because of scholarship. Okay? You have to think again beyond your 2 feet. Okay? So you have to think of the future. You have to think of your descendants. Diba? What is best for them. Okay? Like for example, if you tend to vote for politicians who are pro-mining, then obviously, if you are living in a mining area, then that would be a problem. And if you're given 1,000 to the highest that I've heard in one election is 20,000. Yeah.
Per person, sir.
Per person, and that's a vote straight from president down to the municipal councilor, not even a city councilor. Pero it's a vote straight. Okay? And you would wonder where they get the money, okay? And how they get the money back. Okay? Because it's not charity. Okay? They're doing that for a reason. Okay? And we keep on reminding people about that. Okay? For example, just giving an example, they say that the poor are powerless, but they are majority of our people. That means if they work together and decide what is good for them, okay, then they are the most powerful during elections. Okay? And that is quite difficult for them to understand, if they are listening from the stomach. Okay? If they are thinking from the stomach. Anyway, it's 500 is 500. Okay? Okay? You can just pick 500 every day, di ba? So, yun. That's that's why we all, from voters education, we are now calling it political education. Because now, it's not only limited on elections. We are now saying that even without elections, you can still be engaged, you can still be powerful. Okay? Because remember, we are still a democratic institution.
Alright, any thoughts?
Siguro I can connect with what Sir Mon is saying because I too have this experience with Kwentuhang Bayan of Voters Ed before. This was in Bukidnon, and we were giving this one Kwentuhang Bayan session with the people in this far-flung barangay. And there were so many because they thought that there were politicians will be there to give them something, but then to their amazement, of course, lo and behold, these people pala group of people is giving this kind of voters ed. So parang this kind of disappointed, no, the people, because they were expecting, of course, distribution of this and that, no, and were expecting a parang artista because they were told that an artista is going to see them also and would be in that assembly. But then in the end, you know what happened was kind of very fruitful and meaningful experience for all of us. Not for us who gave the voters ed, but also the people who were there in the assembly, because yung sinabi ni Sir Mon na in that assembly, the power of education and advocacy can really make this big effect in people, and for people to really decide and do something, because parang it was brought to their awareness that they have this kind of power in their hands. Kasi for so long a time that they were voiceless, powerless, parang they have become so complacent. And I guess this happens to all of us also. no, na because for the longest time we do not have this space or avenue to express ourselves and be involved. Parang we become so complacent already, just like these people, no? And when it came to their awareness na, hala, we have pala this power in our hands that we can, just not vote this person because this person really do not do serve his or her own interest and would not look into the interest of the people there, na parang meron pala silang ganung power, and parang this kind of parang motivated them, engage them to do something, especially kasi upcoming yung isang election during that time. I think it was parang national election yun. So it was kind of parang yung palang importance ng education, no, is really something also in allowing people to really be engaged. Another point that I would like to bring out also is that in one occasion when we had this processing, no, of students who had their service learning, immersion in one barangay, one student asked me a question which really stuck to my mind until this time. And kasi I was asking them na, okay, after this session, can you ask one question, no, that parang kind of disturb you, or parang, parang gano'n. Tapos sabi nung bata, Ma'am, what if hanggang ngayon lang itong desire ko to be engaged? Now that I'm back here in Ateneo with all these comforts that I'm experiencing, paano kung makalimutan ko yung nakita ko doon sa community? Nakita ko yung poverty, nakita ko yung, kasi very vivid yung image of what poverty, injustice, and all these things, no, in the community. But now that I'm back here in Ateneo with all the comforts, of course, of Ateneo and my own home, what if I will forget all these things and then go back to the same complacent kind of life that I have? And you know what? Parang that kind of struck me also, and I threw back that question to her. No, what are you going to do now that you have realized that? What are you going to do about it? And I see the importance also of yung sana if we have immersions, like a week or a day or whatever, I see the importance also of processing and the reflection, because in this way students are, or us, no, we're able to make meaning of what we have experienced, and having found that meaning, parang it kind of propels us to do more and to be engaged.
That is something we can also note whenever we have exposure. Actually, that is what we have been practicing as well. Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing. Anyone else who'd like to share? All right. So probably we have had a very great discussion, all right? From different perspectives, on different angles, on how we look into this problem. Now, what do we hope for? Can we have a rundown, one-liner? What do you hope for people to be able to live out? What is it to be an engaged citizen? And probably we'll have a few last words from Sir Beleno before we end. 30 seconds to think. It's very important to have reflection. All right, shall we start? People from the left or from the right? Okay. We need a volunteer.
Sige, I'll just begin.
Okay, go. Go, Shitsu.
So that they can think. Okay, from our context, maybe my hope really in just one line would be Ateneans who have a heart for the least, the last, and the lost.
That's striking. Take note of that.
Maybe my hope will be may students and other people see what it is to live in such a community wherein we'll learn. So I hope that they'll feel what they have felt in other places, and they'll live what they have lived. Siguro ganun.
Thank you. Live what they have lived so far in their lives. Okay.
My hope is for the people to know that they are part of something bigger than themselves, and that from there they will also be able to learn what it really means to love people.
Thank you, Shani. This one back.
It has always been my desire as a member of this institution. I don't look at and we should not look at the Ateneo just like any educational institution, because it is an apostolic instrument of the mission of the Society of Jesus. Ever since I stepped in this university as a student and as a faculty for me to work, I always desire, it has always been my desire that what we have been formed to be, men and women for others, professionals for others, now we call ourselves the Adu Sui Generis Leaders, will really be materialized. As what Father Joel would mention, that our contribution to society is actually our graduates. So if we are graduating every year, say 2,000 graduates, if these 2,000 be contributors in our contribution to society, and they are graduates of multidisciplines, various disciplines, my desire is to see them to truly lead society for the common good, to be agents for social transformation. Because that 2,000 is a very potent number. If every single one of them will truly dedicate themselves, not for their own personal interest, but for the common good, then we will be seeing lawyers, politicians, accountants, doctors, nurses, marketers, entrepreneurs, scientists, that will really be there using their gifts, being humble being humble to recognize that we are all creatures by a creator, that we are here for a purpose, and that purpose is to really establish the kingdom of God. That is really my desire till now. It's my 28th year here in Ateneo, and I still hope, and I still am so impassioned about this, that everything has been afforded, especially in this time, in this leadership of Father Joel, that we are really a vibrant community, that very clear in our mission and vision, our goal, that is to address inequality, to address social injustices, and to work for the common good. I am still very much impassioned that we as a community, as an apostolic body, can make a difference.
For me personally, I hope that the university can contemplate on how they could really enable the students to really be immersed on social issues. Like my ASAP experience really changed me in a lot of ways, and what I saw really stuck to me until now. And I have that privilege because I am a volunteer, but I also feel that I hope that all my fellow peers, my fellow students would experience that too, because I think that what what we said earlier, what we are lacking is awareness. So yeah, I think that is my hope, or that I gained from this conversation.
Thank you.
So on my part, not only my hope but also my prayer. The Philippines will once again, be a strong country with a people who is so much engaged and not blame others, but really be involved. A group of people who would really be involved, who would be giving themselves for others, not only for the love of country, but also for the love of God.
Last position. Last sister.
I hope that everyone in this country, every student, every Filipino citizen challenge themselves to be involved, to be active in their own ways, in their own simple ways, in their own communities, in their own barangay, in their own circle of friends.
Thank you.
Yeah. So since we are in Ateneo, okay, my hope is that my students, our students, would realize that their Ateneo education is not for them alone. That it must be shared, okay, and that to be truly Atenean is giving oneself. Okay, so yun, kasi ngayon medyo we're very quite comfortable na we have top bar passers, yeah, born passers, 100%. But the question is, what have we done? What have these people done to the least of our brothers and sisters? So for me, not just getting Ateneo education, but I really hope that they would soon realize that their education is something that should be shared, and it's not for them alone.
For me, I hope that I believe all people have that compassion inside their hearts, and it just is waiting out in there, waiting there to be translated through service. As what Mother Teresa of Calcutta said, faith in action is love, and love in action is service. And so we hope that we will continuously discern on how we can fully live out a socially engaged life and take part in the greater call for societal change through active citizenship. So thank you so much. This ends our coffee circle conversation. I'm Precious, and I wish you a blessed day.
Real coffee, water yan.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hindi na
Thank you.